Kurt, how are you, man?
Man, I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, awesome.
And look at you. You and I are such opposites. You combed out your luscious beard, and I had to trim mine up so I didn't look so homeless on camera. Folks, welcome back to the Mañana No Mas podcast. I am thrilled that you have decided to join us here today. Today, I have, a quasi-celebrity with me. I've got Erik Allen with me, which is probably one of the most notable people that I've had on the podcast, and I'm super, super stoked that he has agreed to do this. Now, it wasn't that long ago that I didn't know who Erik Allen was, and something on a social media page jumped out to me, and I said, I got to get to know this guy. And we took some steps to get to know each other, and now here he is. So bear with me. I want to read a little piece to you, and I'll share with you who Erik Allen was to me when I first got to know him, but then we're going to talk to him a little bit and get the nitty-gritty details. So it says, raised in a broken home, battled addictions, jailed at 18, bankrupt at 21, only to turn everything around. 16 years sober, beautiful wife, 2 kids, podcaster, speaker, and now helping upcoming MMA fighters and entrepreneurs get to known and noticed online. So Erik, truly a man of integrity, and I've spoken to him in person, so I know this to be true. Work ethic to overcome, growing up with a complicated childhood, a broken home, raising himself from the age of 14, unfortunately finding trouble along the way, desperately trying to fill the gaping voids in his life. As a young man, Erik found himself empty and tired of settling for less. After a feverish pursuit of the Holy Spirit, Erik decided to surrender and trust the one that would never let him down. Once Erik gave his life to Christ, his life completely turned around. He met a beautiful woman, and a new chapter was written. Now, Erik and his wife, 16 plus years, and their 2 children live in northern Idaho and live a humble and blessed life. Together, they are breaking the cycles handed down to them of addiction, depression, abuse, and lies. They are leaving a new legacy for their next generation built on a biblical foundation. Along with being the sole provider of his family, Erik is an entrepreneur and avid MMA fan, which he has created the best MMA podcast of the Northwest. He believes in giving back and honoring those that have served our country. With his company's top-rated MMA and the Erik Allen Show, he is able to do just that by lifting others up and giving back to the community and veterans through the organizations like Hire Heroes USA. And folks, I'm just thrilled to have Erik with me. When I first learned about Erik, it was on a Facebook group page, and he had a goal. I want to be on 100 podcasts this year. And I said, well, I got to get to know this guy. And now here he is. Erik, welcome to the show. And if you would, just tell us a little bit something about yourself that maybe I didn't touch. And then to follow your lead, tell me a little bit about that youth, that young age, that angst.
Man, first of all, Kurt, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for the extremely kind words, man. Really, truly an honor to be here, man. Like you said, man, I grew up in what I thought was a typical household. Went to Sunday school, played Little League. My parents got divorced when I was 11. I had no idea what the word divorce even meant. I'd never heard that word until that happened, And then, of course, my mom got together with a guy who was very physically abusive. And she didn't leave him after the first time, which I thought was weird, right? And then I was 13 years old. They came home arguing. They moved us to the small town, Montana. I was living out in the garage because they didn't have a room for me in the house. They came home arguing, and I walked out. I was brushing my teeth and heard them arguing, nothing different than any other night. But as I was sitting there brushing my teeth, I felt God go, man, you got to turn around. And so the way the house was set up was behind me was the kitchen to the pantry to the garage. And then I peeked around the corner down to the hallway in the pantry where they were at. I saw him on top of my mom. Boom, 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 one shot after the other. And I'm like, I got to get this guy off. And so I walked up behind him. I grabbed a cast iron pan and I swung as hard as I could. And I split the back of his head open. And he turned around and he said, what then? As he said that, I took another swing and I split his forehead open. And I'd hit him so hard the second time, I'd actually fallen over. And I remember him standing up over me. He was bleeding down his face and he was yelling, like, starting to yell at me. And my mom jumps up, lands like 6 punches in a row, blood spots on the wall behind him. Cops finally show up. take him to jail for the night. My mom never pressed charges, but I was actually kicked out of the house at that point. So I had like 3 months left of my freshman year of high school. And that led me down this path of destruction for the next 10 years of my life.
Oh, you know, so many people that I've been speaking to over the last couple of years and through this exercise that's podcasting, which is fantastic. I can't believe the people we get to meet, right? But
yeah.
So many people that I've talked to have overcome some type of obstacle like that. But then as you peel back the layers, you realize that's part of the development. That's part of what made them the strong person of character that they are today. You know, I had a similar experience, mom's boyfriends and stuff like that. And then getting asked to leave high school at a young age. And then again, proving people right, like doing the wrong things for years.
Yeah.
What's the catalyst for you that did you recognize that you were going down the wrong path, or were you just blindly going down this wrong path?
I was blindly going down for a long time. And because what happened was after my freshman year, I went to live with my dad, and he rented this house for him and I, and he'd put $20 of lunch money in the cup for me for my lunch for the week. And then he'd put Hungry Man meals in the freezer and certain milk in the house. And then he'd go stay with his girlfriend. So I had no adult supervision. I had no accountability or anything like that. So I got into drugs really early on. So I was smoking pot before school, during lunch, after school, taking acid, mushrooms, buying a bottle of Robitussin DM because it would make me hallucinate in high school. It only cost $2.50 and acid was $5. So it was like the half the price deal, And, I got arrested at 18, had a black and white chain gang outfit on, I got arrested for drug paraphernalia. I had a bong, which is now legal in the state of Washington. But at the time in 1998, it was not. And, I got kicked out 2 weeks after I graduated high school. I woke up to a note on my bathroom mirror that said, "You can't comply with house rules. You have 48 hours to get out." And I just kept going down the wrong path, man. That led me to, when I got kicked out between the ages of 18 and 21, I moved 21 times. I was basically living on couches and floors for the next, 2 years and living off of credit cards. Didn't know that it was a bad thing to have credit cards. And so by the time I'm 21, I'm $28,000 in debt and had to file bankruptcy. It didn't take me, it took me till I was 23, almost 24 years old to realize that I was heading down a path that was really going to end my life real quick if I didn't start making some changes.
Yeah. Well, and in retrospect, maybe be thankful that you got the message that early, right?
Right.
We totally see folks that continue this way down the road.
Yeah.
And I look at like what a stark difference between, then and now, because I see what you're doing, right? In preparation for this, I was listening to some of your earlier podcasts. I listened to some of your more recent podcasts. I went through your website, things like that. And it's like, man, this guy's got his finger on everything. And one of the pieces that really jumped off in your podcast channel was that little short excerpt you put up about your testimony. And I thought that was fantastic. Tell me a little bit about the inspiration, like the moment when you said, I got to switch this around.
Yeah, it was, I was working in the music business. My dream job had always been music business. And I got laid off my 1 year anniversary from Universal Records. And it kind of put me in this depression. So I was working at night at Starbucks, and I would get off work and go to the store, grab a 6-pack of beer, and go to my ghetto apartment across the street from where Jimi Hendrix is buried there in Renton, Washington. And one night this girl walked in and said, "Hey, we've got this cool college age event down at our church. Would you be interested in going?" I didn't have any friends. I was impressed. She was really good looking. Absolutely, I will go. What time do I need to be there? Like, I was all for it, know? And I got down there and I ended up knowing all these guys. Like, I'd seen them from high school. And this is like, I'd moved from Eastern Washington to Western Washington, out in the Seattle area at this time. And so it was like, dude, I haven't seen you in 5 years. I haven't seen you in 10 years. And I think in that moment that God started to put the seed in me. Like, I was helping out with all these people, and God was really trying to get my attention, I think. And it was about a month later, it was Easter 2004. And was out there managing a band, and we went and partied the night before, played a concert the night before Easter. And I woke up Easter morning in my buddy's basement, surrounded by probably 15 guys. And in that moment, I felt God say, "Man, you're going down this wrong path. You got to make some serious changes to your life." And I decided in that moment to give my life to Christ. And I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. And gave that girl a call, got her voicemail, and said, "Hey, thanks for inviting me to that church event. Really appreciate it. Maybe I'll see you at the store." And now she's my wife of almost 17 years, man.
That's a phenomenal story. So many folks have this issue with, giving their life to Christ or making a transitional change of that magnitude, right? Because we have listeners that might not be Christian, maybe not understand that alignment, but maybe they're following some other path.
Sure. Yeah.
And there comes that moment where like reality and like perceived destiny kind of clash, right? Where you're like, I can't keep smoking, I can't keep drinking, I can't keep sleeping with all these chicks. I can't, something's got to give. And then a decision has to get made. And in your story, it's like the decision was made, like, boom, I'm just done.
Yeah. Yep. I heard a pastor of mine talk about when I was sitting down with him having coffee one time, and he said, God almost has us on these strings. And when we sin, he cuts the string and he reties it. We come a little bit closer to him. And eventually we're going to get our strings completely cut. And we'll just be in his hands. And we've given up the crap. And I felt like that was the moment that the string that I was sort of on, I was finally done, and I was in God's hands, and I could say, all right, now I can, let go of all of this stuff. Cause I tried to quit drinking and tried to quit smoking over the years and just like always fell back into it. But that was the one moment that I really felt strong enough to go, nope, I'm doing it right now. And it never turned back, man.
Yeah. Boom. This is it. This is the moment. So almost like an inspiration to others, right? Like how did that happened? You make the decision, but you still have 15 passed out friends in the other room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what does that look like when you're like, hey, this isn't for me anymore. Hey, fellas, or like some people would say, oh, some people say I was going to quit drinking, but I'm not a quitter. Right. It's like,
yes.
How do you embrace relationships with people from both sides of your life like that when you make that kind of transition?
I love this question because it shows the true friendship that I had. And these were guys that I'd known for several years. We had gone out and we partied and things like that. And what I did was I was an early riser. So I woke up at 5, and that's when that happened. That's when I felt God say, man, you're done. And everyone else was still sleeping. This was down in Prosser, Washington. So I got in my car immediately. Everyone was still sleeping. And I just drove straight home to Seattle. And I got home and I called all my buddies and I told them, I'm like, hey, here's the thing. For me personally, I've got to take a break. Mentally, I'm going down a bad road. Like I've got to make some serious changes, or there's going to be some serious stuff that's going to happen in my life. So I need to take a break from partying. I need to take a break from going out to concerts and being in that environment. And they're like, dude, you get better. You let us know when you're ready. And I literally took about 6 months off from going to any concert, going to any bar, even talking to anybody that was involved in that situation. And those guys are still my friends today. They knew that I was going on a path that they probably saw me partying over like really hard and just never said anything. And so when I made that decision to do it on my own, they respected that. And when I told them about that, they said, man, you got to do you got to get healthy. And when you're ready, we're here. And they're still my friends today.
That's a great example. Too many times we hear the story about the crabs in the bucket, right? You start to climb out of the bucket and the other crabs pull you back down. Yeah. But it sounds like these guys supported you and then kind of embraced you coming back, right? Like you could still be their buddy, still hang out. But totally. It doesn't mean, I want to say this in a way that's not demeaning. It's okay for you to have your beliefs and follow what you do and not make them feel like crap for not coming alongside of you. Like if they want to have a beer or, drink some whiskey on the rocks, that's fine. But it's not for you.
Yep, exactly. And I think, there's a lot of times when there's people like in other situations where you tell them like you want to get out or you want to stop doing that. And then you have those crabs that pull you back down. And here's my thought process of that is if they're saying that, and if they're trying to pull you back, they're not your real friends. Like as much as you want to say that I love these guys, but if they're pulling you back, trying to stop you from getting better or healthier, then they're probably not your true friends. Those guys, I can go out to a bar with them now and I can drink water and I can drink soda and they can have a beer and it's no big deal. They don't judge me. I'm not judging them. Like, hey, that's their life. That's just for me. I had to take a break from that. They're just great buds.
Well, and it takes the pressure off everybody if there's already a designated driver in the group.
Totally. Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
So life moves forward. You guys are married, you have kids. And then, MMA and podcasting and all that stuff seems to come up, right? So talk to me a little bit about the love of MMA and what you're doing there. Cause I saw stuff that went as far back as 2012. So that's like, dude, you're doing this 9 years. This ain't a flash in the pan, right? You're right. And I can't compare you to Joe Rogan because he's super, super famous.
Yeah, totally.
You've been doing this a while. So where does this come from? How did you get started? And one of my questions, and I can ask it again if you forget it, is how do you attract the talent that you get to your podcast? And how did you find such a high percentage of females to participate in the podcast?
Great questions, by the way. I think it started for me at a really early age. My dad would get the Mike Tyson pay-per-views as a kid. So I remember watching boxing as a kid. I went to all of like the local WWF events when it was called WWF. My dad would take me to see Hulk Hogan and Ravishing Rick Rude and Macho Man and all those guys. And like even the regional market where we'd see like Jake the Snake in the early days and, Dusty Rhodes in the early days. So like always was around wrestling or combat sports. My dad would rent movies that didn't even speak English. They were just ninja movies. And so we would just sit there and watch ninja movies as a kid. I think I was a ninja for Halloween for like 15 years straight. It was just like, it started to cultivate this love for the sport. Now I never trained. I never got into karate except for, maybe a short time period when I was a kid, a little bit of boxing in high school, but never competed. But, I was sitting around the house with my wife in 2012 and I was like, man, I really want to get involved in MMA, but I don't want to be a fighter. But this is kind of during the tap out era. And how do we make ourselves known and get out there? So my wife, being the smart one, came up with the name Top Rated MMA. And we said, how do we make ourselves different? And so we came out and we said, we're going to be 100% American made. And at the time, there might have been one other MMA apparel company that was 100% American made. And then we said, also, how do we make ourselves stand out from everyone else that's out there just trying to do this thing? And so we reached out to Brian Stan's organization. Brian Stan, former UFC fighter, started this organization called Hire Heroes USA. And they take veterans and their families, give them free job placement and job training, and they help them get into jobs for free at no cost. And so I said, hey, we want to partner with you guys. Can we just donate, set up a partnership and we'll donate, like, I think we started out with like $1 per shirt, but now it's 25% of all affiliate profits that I make for my website. We give back to those guys. And that's kind of when it started, 2012. But what happened was in 2015, I got bored with it. We didn't have a business plan. I was not making any money, didn't know what I was doing. And I put an ad in Craigslist and I said, who wants to buy this company? And one guy called me up and said, hey, I'll offer you a few grand. And in that call, I decided I wasn't ready to quit. And so I took the next year to kind of just like ho-hum through the business. Didn't really do much with it. I had the website, had the stuff up, but I wasn't really paying too much attention. And then I decided in 2017, I wanted to start a podcast. Like, I want to ask fighters why they want to get in a cage and get punched in the face. Didn't have any clue what I was doing, man. I got in a walk-in closet for almost 100 episodes. Didn't look in the camera, didn't look in the microphone, didn't talk in the microphone, bad lighting. But I just wanted to understand, like, why are these guys in the cage? And so that's kind of how it started. And then episode 239, I think, drops this weekend of the Top Rated MMA show. And humbly considered the #1 MMA podcast out here in the Northwest. Oh, and your other question about the female fighters, but I'll get to that in a second.
Well, I saw the amount of episodes and I was just like, holy crud, this guy's been doing this a bit, right?
Yeah.
And when you and I spoke before, I told you I was part of a show called MMA Pro Watch. And so when I saw the Hire Heroes connection, that reminded me of Brian Stan. Brian Stan was the first person that we followed in that TV series. Okay. So we followed Brian Stan for 30 days, hung out with his wife and kids and all this stuff 30 days before the fight. The rules with UFC were we couldn't cover anything about the fight, but we could cover, kind of the lifestyle and the training of the athletes to get ready. And not for nothing, Brian's a super nice guy. He was super pleasant to me, but he was not entertaining TV because he was so serious. I was like, so what are you doing during the day, Brian? And he was like, right now I'm checking my emails. Yeah. Whereas Clay Guida was like, I want to take my friends go-karting and shooting guns. Can we go do that? Right. I was like, yes, good TV. But man, to think of all the people that you've had. And when I started looking at how many females you had in the lineup, I was like, how, so maybe I'm so far out of touch. MMA is not a primary sport for me. How many females are actually in the sport? And how do you get such a high percentage of females to partner in your podcast?
I think when we really started to see the explosion of women in MMA, it was like Gina Carano back in the day. Right. Mm-hmm. And then it was Ronda Rousey. And then it was Misha Tate. And then it just has blown up over the years. Right. So it's like probably 2013-ish, somewhere in there is really when I think it started to really take off, when Ronda was involved and, Gina Carano was there. And so I love to be able to talk to female fighters. One, because most people don't realize that there's really badass fighters that are women that could probably kick my butt or anybody. I know for a fact they could kick my butt, but like there's women out there that are like legit awesome fighters and they just don't get the credit or they don't get the notability that they should. And so my show is all about focusing on those up and coming MMA fighters or early pro fighters and really just helping to help people understand their story. if you watch my show, the first question I ask everybody is like, hey, tell me about where you grew up and what was childhood like for you? Because I want people to relate to them, whether they had a great childhood or they had a horrible one. I want them to understand that these are just real people that decided they want to do something and they took action to do it. And
tremendous.
Yeah. So, I mean, lots of female fighters, and I love talking to female fighters and getting their perspective about things.
You hit on something, and I feel like I wanted to interrupt, and then you started talking like, don't interrupt them, don't interrupt them, be a good host. But it's like, I remember I saw Holly Holm, Julie Kedzie. I was at the Jackson Wink gym all the time, doing the show. And like I said, MMA is not a primary sport for me. So this is all new. But when I went to the gym, I lived in that area. So turned out I knew a lot of people in the sport that I didn't know were in the sport. I walked in and said, hey, Kurt, what's up? What's up? People from church and stuff like that. Yeah. And what blew me away is, as a spectator, as a fan, as you see these hardened personalities that, do the face-to-face fight pose and all that stuff. And then you go to the gym where you see them in real life. Like if you run into Holly Holm out in the streets, she's going to give you a big hug. She's just a nice lady, and it's like, they're so compassionate, so friendly, so over the top. I remember when the wrestling coach came into the gym and his name was Izzy, and Izzy was giving everybody a session, right? And everyone's getting to participate. And it's like, isn't that guy supposed to fight that guy like in 3 months or what? But it was like, just family. It was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the respect that MMA fighters have for each other. 99% of the time, it's never personal. And they know that when they get into the cage. Sometimes there's some personal beef, but most of the time it's not. And I also just love the fact that any fighter that I've ever met outside of the cage or, just out in the street or at an event and they weren't fighting and they were just out in the, even before event, I've met fighters, I'm going to fight in 10 minutes, right? Absolutely the nicest guys ever. Nice women as well. Like just the absolute, I would never mess with them in the street, but when you get them outside of the cage, they're like just normal, nicest people I've ever met. We're always MMA fighters.
I guess there's a certain lift or a certain, gait to your step, right? When you realize you could pretty much kick anybody's butt that gave you any trouble. Right.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you're just like, whatever. And I really enjoyed it. Now I see you working with those folks, and then you have the other channel, the Erik Allen Show. Yeah. Right. Yeah. That is completely different. Yep. I noticed similar structures and certain themes that stay the same, but different altogether. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I started that show. I've always been kind of into entrepreneurship, but in 2018, I came across Ed Milet and I was like, holy crap, this guy's amazing. He was like speaking directly to me, man. And so I went out and I got his book, which you can get for free if you just Google Max Out Book by Ed Milet. You just pay like $6 shipping. I'm not affiliated with it, but I just promote that book because it's so good. But anyways, I came across Ed Milet and it really inspired me to start another show about entrepreneurs. I want to talk with entrepreneurs, world changers, and success-minded people who are out there making lives better, making a huge impact. And I kind of took the thing that I had about Top Rated Me is, why do you want to get in cage and get punched in the face? Same thing with entrepreneurs. Why do we want to get into entrepreneurship and get punched in the face? Hopefully not physically, but getting no's, rejected. We fail, but we keep going. We keep fighting. Why do we keep going? And so in 2019, Ed Milet issued the Max Out Challenge to his 1 million Instagram followers. You had to submit a 1-minute story of what you're passionate about, what drives you, why do you want to be successful? And I did that. And 2 months later, I was announced as the Ed Milet Max Out Challenge winner, along with the Camp Agape, which is another camp, or which is a Christian camp out of California. And I won the phone call with Ed, and it was supposed to be 20 minutes. We ended up talking with 30, changed my life. And I was able to record that and release that. So episode 12 of my show, it used to be called The Bearded Biz. Now it's called The Erik Allen Show, was Ed Milet. And prior to that, I had Sean Whalen. So it kind of like stepstoned me right into really big names where I've now been able to speak to Brad Lee and Bedros Keuilian and Tim Story and Jim the Rookie Morris and Dan Caldwell, the founder of Tap Out, and Greg Reed. The list goes on and on. And so that's what that show's about. I love talking with entrepreneurs and hearing their stories of failure and how they got there and what are they doing now? And how big is the impact that they want to make?
So I'm going to go on a limb and I'm going to say that I've noticed a theme between the MMA and the entrepreneur channels. And it seems to me, and I don't know if it's by mistake or on purpose, maybe you can shed some light on this.
Yeah.
You are drawn to people that, the guy that I just listened to today said, he just hates average. Average is not okay. Right.
Yes.
Like, people that have been knocked down, maybe had an abusive background, maybe, lots of failures, but they failed forward, right? People found a way to overcome. And you seem to have this knack for getting people on your podcast that are like, yeah, I may have failed. So what? Look at me now. Like, I'm moving forward unapologetically. And that there's no such thing as toxic masculinity on your channel. It just seems to be like masculinity is what it is. Let's go.
Yep. I love hearing the stories, the underdog stories. Where did people come from? And not very many people have I had on my show that had like this perfect childhood, and then look at them now. And I think very few of them even got to a point where they're making $400-300 million a year, and they were just given that life. When I talked with Ed Milet, like his story, if you know his story, like that's not what happened. Like he was going to go pro as a Major League Baseball player, and then he got injured in college, and then he had to go figure out what he was going to do for a job. And then boom, here he is now, worth $450 million plus dollars. So I love talking with guys that are, these underdogs that didn't have life just given to them, but they had to work hard to get to where they're at. I love that story, because I think I'm on that journey myself. I still work full-time job, but I love people's stories. I'm fascinated with people's stories. Like, how did you get there? And it helps me to talk with them. And then I'm like, man, this is so good. I got to share it with the world.
You're kind of getting to the answer of the question I haven't asked yet. And that was, when you get these personalities, when you get the people that, really hit a strong message. I thought that, what's his name? Joe, right? I wrote it down. Joe DeRoma, right? I thought his message was like pretty stinking strong, the way that he delivered that. Besides having an impact on your audience, what does the constant influx of these types of messages do to you personally?
Oh man, it's so good. Like, I started the podcast selfishly so I could talk to amazing people and get fired up. Right. And then it was kind of like, man, I can't hold all this in. I got to get it out. And so for me, when I'm having the conversation, I'm like mind blown. Like, oh my gosh, this is so good. This is firing me up to do better, be better in my marriage, be better in my business, be better as a dad. And, so I catch it when I'm doing the show, but then I do all the editing myself. So then I'm like reviewing it as I'm editing it, and it just sinks in more. And so it really does fire me up. The guests that I've had on my show, they've talked about, doing vision boards and vision walls and stuff like that. And it's really inspired me in 2021 to take my businesses and my branding and my podcasting to a whole nother level. I created a vision wall of my office, because my vision it's bigger than a board. I got a vision wall. Right. And so I just created it. Yeah. Right. So, and just like having people on my show and talking about like their morning routines. Like for me, I'm big on morning routines. I wake up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week, and it's very consistent. And I get up and I look at that wall, and I, get right in my mind, and then it's time to start. So, the guests that I have on my show, that fires me up and encourages me and motivates me, inspires me to be so much better than I am today.
That morning routine thing that you mentioned it more than just a few times. I hear you say it a lot. Yeah. And I'm also a morning routine guy. I'm a 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning guy. Nice. Typically, and God's going to strike me down because I'm not as faithful as I should be, but I dive into the book. I try and do a little bit of scripture. I got a devotional that I read that starts with the scripture from John Maxwell, and then a breakdown of what that is. And then I've got this little journal thing I do. And it's not like a diary journal. It's a journal that's like, what are the 3 things you're looking forward to today? What are you going to do today? And then at the end of the day, I just spend 5 minutes and reflect, and like, did I enjoy those 3 things? And did I do what I said I was going to do? Right. And the last thing for my journal would be, how did God influence that day? What amazing person did he put in my life? Or what jumped out from the day that made me realize that God was part of it, that I'm not alone, and that he's with me, and that things are working out. But you mentioned the morning routine, and that made me think of other people that do it. And so I've been paying attention. Brian Benstock is this dude on LinkedIn that I follow. He owns like one of the most successful Honda dealerships in the country. And he gets up he does more by 7 o'clock in the morning than most of his staff does in a whole day. He works out, he's training for marathons, he reads, he's, all this stuff. And he's, taking care of his social media propagation and all of these things. And I'm looking at that. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at what I do. And I'm hoping that I'm part of this circle, right? Where everyone's just got a seat on that edge of the circle, and we're all just like pouring value into the people that come in with us,
Absolutely. And just even what you said about like journaling and then reviewing that, like that's something I need to be better at. Like I look at my wall and that's my goals and things like that, but I don't do much reviewing at the end of the day, except for I do write on a little post-it, my to-do list for the morning. So like before I leave the office to go back down, to go down to be with my family for the night, I write what I'm going to do first thing in the morning. So I don't get up here, I'm like lost and going looking at Facebook and like, oh, I got to check email. But no, I have this to-do list that I have to do first thing in the morning, then I can kind of start working. But that's the one thing that I need to be better at, reflecting on my goals. And I haven't done that very much. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, I got a journal here with your name on it. When this is all done, you're going to send me an address and I'll make sure I get it to you.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. That's awesome.
I got turned on to it by a guy in the SaaS world, right? Software as a service world.
Yep.
And he helps companies that are building SaaS products get motivated. And he got me started on the journaling. And because it was a journal that wasn't like a diary.
Yeah.
It was listed like, what are 3 things you're grateful for? What are 3 things you're looking forward to? Who are you thankful for today? And then I got hooked on it and I said, man, this is great. And then I found another journal that I really love and that's, I've been sticking with it. So looking at your channels, looking at your messages, looking at, your faith, how do you think all of that, and this is going to sound like such a easy question, but it's hard to ask the right way.
Sure.
You're raising kids. Yeah. How do you put all of this stuff that quite honestly is up here compared to most American adults, right? Like if we track what most people do in a day, they're watching 5 hours of Netflix and 3 hours of Facebook, right?
Yeah.
So if we take what we're putting into our minds and then you're trying to pour that into your children, is there any kind of culture conflict you see with the way your kids interact in society, or what kind of placement does that put them in? And is that even a concern?
Yeah, I mean, it's big. So my wife and I are kind of on the same page where one, we haven't had cable for probably 12 years and we shut off the news about 5 years ago. Like I don't worry about the news. I know what's around me and this is what I can take care of, is my surrounding, my family, things like that. My kids don't have iPads. They don't have phones. They're 11 and 8. They don't need to be on an iPad 6 hours a day. And during the summer, like sitting around and watching TV all day, we just don't do it. We have Friday night movie night and we have Saturday night movie night. And that's it. Our kids they're not hooked to the TV. My kids love reading. They love doing Legos. They love doing drawing and art and stuff like that. So we're kind of like in pushing them towards that. Like, hey, you know what? We don't need to be watching stuff. We don't need to watch TV. Let's get them excited about a Friday night movie night. Let's get them excited about a family movie night on Saturday night, and then we go to church together. But, I think you have to set boundaries. So for me, I get up at 4 a.m. because one, my desire to be successful is bigger than my desire to sleep. But two, it allows me to, like you said, you're the guy that you mentioned, I'm most productive in the early morning when no one else is awake. So I can get up, I can get so much done, like personal development. I get in, I look at my vision wall, I turn on worship music, I'm reading through the word, really just spending time in prayer and being thankful for what I have. I don't like to ask for a lot of things, but I'm sure as heck just saying thank you for health and family and, all of the blessings that I have. And in that time, that 4 to 7 time frame is where I'm really, editing my shows. I'm reaching out to guests, things like that. And then at 8 o'clock, I flip over and I start working on my regular job. Right. But at 5 o'clock, that's when that's my boundary. No more work, no more podcasting, things like that. Occasionally that might come up where I have to go past 5, but I really try that at 5 o'clock, I shut everything down and the rest of the evening is playing catch with my son or, outside with my daughter or playing Frisbee or, playing with the dog or hanging out with my wife. Everything after 5 o'clock is family. And so if I can get up early and really make my time, that's my time. That's when everyone else is asleep. But then as soon as 5 o'clock hits, man, it's time to shut everything down and be focused and present with my family.
Yeah. I'm a little selfish because in Southern California, it's over 100 degrees today. So the earlier I get started, the cooler my work area is. Right. Yeah, so usually about this time of day, it's way too hot to be sitting in front of a computer doing something. But again, with the kids, my daughter's in the middle of reading my John Maxwell library. I mean, she's working all the way through it. She's going to be 17 amazing. This August. Come on. And I see her analyzing, peers and adults and youth leaders. And she's saying, oh, he's using the process of, motivation. He's using the process of, replacing one as a leader. He's using the process, and she's identifying it. And I'm realizing that whether she chooses to go to college or be an entrepreneur or be an author or whatever it is that she's choosing, she's going to have that head start, over binge watching Netflix for 7 hours a day and Facebook and TikTok for another 3.
Yeah.
And
totally.
that's my thing. So I was wondering for you how that was working. I'll tell you what, Erik, I want to value your time. What's a really good way for listeners of the Mañana No Mas podcast to learn more about you, to reach you, to identify with you better?
Yeah, ErikAllenMedia.com is the website. I'm big on Instagram, so I respond to every comment and every DM. It's just Erik, Erik, G Allen, and you can shoot me a message on there. You can comment on anything, have any questions, feel free to shoot me a message. Like I said, I respond to every DM and every comment on there. I love connecting with new people. And so, yep, those would be the 2 best ways to get a hold of me.
Excellent. So on Instagram, when people hit you with a DM, how many of those, I'm just curious, are to be in, hey, you look really good. You would look good in our sportswear. We'll give you 15% off.
I get a few of those for sure. I mean, maybe 2 or 3 a day. I get some of those, junk spam stuff like that. But, the genuine ones, I always check and, see who they are. And if they're like just these jokers on there, I'll usually mess with them and, respond them back with some weird messages. But typically if people are responding, like genuinely asking questions, I'm all about it, man. I love talking with new people and, things like I'm on Fiverr as a seller too. So I always get really weird requests. So like, I'll do like beard model products and like brand videos and stuff like that. And then I'll have these people shoot me a message. Hey, can you model these, latex shorts for me? Heck no. Right. Like, I don't know where they come from. It's just funny that I get all these requests on there.
Latex shorts, baby. There you go.
Yeah, totally.
If you wear them, you get to keep them. That's what the models say, right?
Right. That's what they say. Yeah. So, and I'm like, even if I charge you what my normal rate is, there's no way I'm going to do that.
One last thing.
Yeah.
What kind of people are you looking for to get in touch with you to be on your show?
That's a great question, man. So my show, I love people that are fighting for their dreams. I don't care if you're working a full-time job, but if you've got this passion to do podcasting or art or whatever it is, and you're fighting for that on a daily basis, those are the people that I love. Like they have this big goal in mind and they're just fighting for it no matter what. I'm a big believer in our past, and other people's opinions do not affect our future. They don't define our future. So whatever your past is, man, if you're fighting for your goal, keep going. Those are those people that I love to talk to.
I love that. Erik, you and I have both had some hard knocks younger, you more so than me, and well on the path to overcoming them, man. I love to hear the value you add to people, the hope that you give people. And quite honestly, man, your story is really amazing.
Thank you.
I mean, how do you go from beating a dude up with a cast iron grill, right, to interviewing celebrities on podcasts and having such a high rated podcast? So, dude, I wish you the best. And I really want to encourage the Mañana No Mas listeners at this point. I mean, there's going to be some links in the description. Click them, follow them, like them, get involved, hit them up on LinkedIn. I mean, the guy's everywhere. You got to find him.
Kurt, such an honor to be here, man. Really appreciate the opportunity, man. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to have me on, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Yep.
Bye-bye.